Hey, what's going on? I'm kind of new to the space here. Are you taking a stance in any particular religion, or are you just taking questions about any religion?
Yeah, I defend Orthodox Christianity, but we can debate, any challenge to that position from any of the other positions.
Sure. Okay, so Orthodox Christianity, that's interesting. I guess the first question would be, yeah, where exactly does Orthodox Christianity come from? And, who gets to decide what is Orthodox? What is the original meaning of the religion?
Well, I mean, the historic churches that were set up under the Roman Empire in the first, second, third century by the apostles, their successors who were at the councils of Nicaea, Constantinople, etc., during the first millennium. So that's what defines, and that's who defines the Orthodox Church. The Orthodox Church today, the canonical Orthodox Catholic Church, is the same church as that church.
Okay, but I guess my point is, how do we know exactly what they believed in and exactly what they taught all these years later?
Because we can go read them.
Where?
What do you mean where? You can read Ignatius, Clement, Cyprian. You can read Athanasius, Alexander. I mean, these are all pre-Nicene church fathers. What do you mean?
So we all so we're basing our entire belief system on five guys who we have no idea exactly
No,
who they are.
I listed five people who are very famous, known throughout the entire world. It's not people that nobody knows who they are. They're representative bishops of their time. And then I listed the Council of Nicaea, which was all the bishops of the Roman Empire in 325. So these are not nobodies, and they're not people that you can't find. They're not obscure people.
So, but we don't have the original writings of the New Testament. We have copies of copies of copies. So how can we really trust any document from antiquity and from the past? Do we just have to put our faith in it?
The New Testament documents are more well attested to than any other ancient and historical document. There's over 5,000 copies of the New Testament from the first few centuries of the church.
That may be true. There may be more copies of the New Testament than any other book, but those other books we don't claim to be written or inspired by God. So I guess that's the big difference.
That was just a refutation of your first assertion that it's not well attested to. It is well attested to, better than any other book like Plato or Aristotle or anyone else from antiquity.
Yes, no, I'm saying that may be true, but if the Orthodox stance is that again, depending on what you believe, it was inspired by God or written by God, or however the Orthodox Church says it, then if that's the case, well, we don't have that original text.
You're correct that we do not have what's called autographa. We have later copies of the Gospels and Paul's epistles, but that's not how I would go about arguing whether the religion is true. I would use a more philosophical argument, which is more of a worldview level argument than competing claims about historicity of the text, because the religion is not ultimately even based on the text, because it's the church, the community of the church that produced the text. So the church is even prior to the text.
So does the belief in Jesus being the Son of God, is that even relevant within Christianity today, or is Christianity more just about a lifestyle?
No, that's absolutely fundamental to Christianity.
Okay, but how can we know that he was actually God?
Well, I would use a transcendental argument to prove that the Orthodox Christian paradigm is the only paradigm that can give an account for knowledge, ethics, and metaphysics.
I'm not sure how you can prove that. I mean, we have no writings from Jesus. Nobody who wrote the New Testament actually knew Jesus at all.
That's assuming that Jesus didn't appoint apostles who are able to write down what Jesus taught. And Jesus did inspire the Old Testament in our view. So that's not even true in terms of the Old Testament. That's all about Jesus as well from our perspective. But the argument I gave is called a transcendental argument, that only the Christian worldview, in terms of its metaphysics, ethics, etc., can give an account for things like reason and logic.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it depends. There's obviously thousands of different religions that people believe in, and I don't claim to understand all of them because there's so many, and I'm sure they would make the same statements about their own religions.
Yeah, but that's a different thing from actually doing it. What is your perspective? What's your worldview?
No, my view is I'm a Christian, but I think that there's a lot of issues, and I think there's a lot of things that people just need to be honest about in terms of the text and what it really means in terms of how it relates to us all these years later, 2,000 years later.
Well, how could you be a Christian if you don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God, or that's a necessary belief? Because that's always been a necessary position for
No,
Christianity.
I didn't state one way or the other what I believe. I was just basically stating a point, because I think a lot of people consider themselves cultural Christians now, where they don't necessarily believe that, but they claim
Yeah.
Christianity.
But it sounds like the way you were arguing was as a cultural Christian or as an atheist. So I'm confused about your
No,
position.
I'm just interested. to get your perspective.
You won't say your position?
No, I'm not going to say a position. I just
Why?
like to just like to ask questions and see what people's thoughts are, because it is such
Okay.
an interesting topic.
Okay. How would you give an account for logic and reasoning?
An account for logic and reasoning in terms of what? A specific topic?
What is logic and what is the faculty of reasoning, and how do we have it, and how does it work, and how do you know that?
Logic would be something that I could prove using my brain, deductive reasoning, maybe math, science, the environment. Reasoning is the ability to dissect certain information and create a specific outcome.
Well, how does using logic prove it? So we use all kinds of things that aren't necessarily the case. I mean, I might utilize, unicorns in my narrative story about fiction realms. That doesn't prove that unicorns exist. Why does using a thing mean that it's the case or that it's true?
No, I just if you're trying to get at the point of using logic, are you trying to say how do we use logic to prove what we're talking about is true or false?
Well, earlier I made the argument that only Christianity can give an account for those types of things. And you said, well, I'm not sure about that. So I'm illustrating how I would go about making that argument by asking you what your account is in your worldview for logic as a thing itself. And then I'm going to contrast it with my perspective and my account of how logic works.
Well, quite frankly, I don't think there's anything logical about the story. I don't think there's anything logical that really makes sense.
That's fine, but I'm making a different argument, which was about the categories themselves and how we account for them. So, for example, if Jesus is the universal principle of reason or logos himself, that's a way to give an account for universals and logic. And I'm asking you, if you're going to use logic to argue against Christianity that it's not logical, what is your account for logic then?
Well, I think that that's an assumption to say that he is logos or logic.
Well, now wait a minute. The revelation which you don't accept, even though you said you're a Christian, calls him that in John 1, right?
Yes, again, but there are many issues, obviously, with the New
Okay,
Testament.
so fine. Maybe it's all false. Maybe all the Gospels are false. How does that help you to give an account for reason and logic?
Well, my reasoning and logic tells me that out of all the people who have ever lived on the planet,
You're appealing to the thing I asked you to give a justification for. I asked you how logic is the case and how you know that, and you're just saying, well, I use logic. Yeah, but I'm asking you for an account for that.
no, the logic is it would be coming from a historical perspective. So from a historical perspective, then you must say then that the miracle of him being born to a virgin and resurrecting from the
So
dead.
you're not even listening. I'm asking you about logic itself, and you keep diverting away from that and restating an argument based on logic. I want to know in your worldview how there's such a thing as logic and how it works if you're an agnostic or whatever you are.
Yeah, but I'm not sure proving what the definition of logic is has anything to do with the
Are you using logic to argue against Christianity?
I'm using logical statements that you must use
Correct.
in order
So
to.
those rely on logic, and how does logic work?
Well, logic works by using your brain, I would say.
And so again, you're restating the thing that was already disproven a minute ago. Using a thing or saying that it's in your brain doesn't make it justified and doesn't show how it works. How is that universal?
Well,
is it just your brain? What about is it in my brain too?
no, but it's like how do you know anything is real in the world? You use your brain.
How do you know? So your answer is a two-quote way to ask me how I know anything is real when I ask you for an account for logic and universal categories.
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. Then, if
How do you give an account for logic and its universal, immaterial, invariant nature?
what does that mean? You're using a lot of big words. What does that mean? I'm giving you how.
They're standard philosophical terms. You wanted to use logic to argue against Christianity, and I'm saying, okay, fine, maybe Christianity is false. I want you now to give me an account for the thing that you're relying on and using, namely logic.
Because the claims of the New Testament, the claims of the Bible.
Yeah, again, this is I already could, let's say I concede to you that the Bible's false. How does that give an account for the ontological status of logic?
No, but I'm using logic, and I'm getting to my point, which is that
Which is a circle, because I'm asking you how you know logic works in the world. What's your justification for logic? You're using a thing that you have no justification for.
No,
But
because
wait
we
a
live
minute,
in the world.
that was your hold on. That was your original critique of me. Your original
No,
critique
I have no
was
critique of
you're
you.
relying on
No,
a
I
thing
never
that
critiqued you.
you're. Yes, you did. You said we're relying on a book that we can't know,
Yeah,
and
but
then
that's not a
the
critique
miracles
on
are
you. You
irrational.
didn't write it. It's not a critique on you.
It's a critique of my position. Stop playing word games. I'm asking you to justify your use of logic because that's what you're relying on to refute Christianity. You're in a terrible position.
No, not really. Because
Okay, so why should we believe logic? How is it? What is it? Where is
well,
it?
logic is what you live every day, and so, for instance,
You don't see how dumb that is. It's just what you live. Okay, I live as a degenerate. Is that
no,
logic?
no, no. There's certain laws of physics, right? For instance, there's not one person on this planet.
So the laws of logic are the laws of physics?
In a way, you use logic.
Can you observe a law of logic under a microscope?
No, but you use logic in order to figure out what the laws of physics are.
Using things doesn't tell me that it's true or that it should be used. I gave the example earlier of a unicorn in a story. That doesn't tell me unicorns are true.
No, but for instance, there's not one person on this planet who can walk on in a pool of lukewarm water, right? But in the Bible, they make the claim that Jesus walked on water. So that's an extraordinary event.
Yeah, but I already conceded. Yeah, but I conceded to you. Let's say that the Bible is false. That's fine. And so it's all true. It's all made up stories. How does that work for you to give an account for logic, the very thing that you're using?
I don't know that I have to make that connection.
Oh, so you don't have to give an account for the things that you rely on, but I do. So
No,
that's
no,
a double standard.
no, but
that's another fallacy.
no, I'm not relying on anything but logic and reasoning.
And you don't have to give an account.
No,
for that.
I am, because
No, you're not. You just keep stating that it's the case and that you use it. That's not giving an account for it or explaining how it is or where it is or what it is.
yeah, but your stance is that you're believing every word of that book as if
You want me to accept an immaterial, invariant, unchanging, unseeable thing that you can't give an account for. You just say it just is. Now imagine if I came to this debate and I said, God just is. You would laugh at that. That's literally what you're doing with the thing that you're using to try to argue against God's existence.
no, that's not what I'm doing, and I'm not arguing against God's existence.
It's not what you're doing. What you literally said about 10 times, that logic is just what it is and it's what we do with our brain. It just is.
No, I mean, my argument is that it's a book full of mistakes, contradictions. It's not inerrant.
How does that tell you what? Can you not repeat? You don't even understand what my argument is. You couldn't. Could you restate my argument?
You're all over the place. I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly.
No, I'm not all over the place. I'm very precise for the last 20 minutes exactly what my argument is. How am I all over the place when I've asked you like 20 times to give a justification for what logic is or how you use it?
Well, you're asking me to use logic and reasoning, and I'm using logical examples of why there might be problems.
No, I'm asking you a higher order question. I'm asking you what it is, not do you use it. What is it?
What does your definition of logic have anything to do with what we're talking about?
Can you restate what my argument even is?
You can restate it.
The transcendental argument for God, which is an argument that posits that without the existence of the God within Orthodox Christianity specifically, we couldn't have a basis, a philosophical, epistemic basis for what we think about metaphysics, ethics, and epistemology. That worldview actually grounds the fundamental assumptions that we have in those three domains of philosophy, and that is the argument. The transcendental argument is that God grounds those fundamental ideas and gives us a coherent account of the world. Thus, by extension, any other position, be it atheist or whatever, would have fundamental flaws such that it would not be able to give an account of knowledge, ethics, and metaphysics. So that is the argument. That's how the argument runs. Obviously, there's much more to it than that, but in short, that's how the argument functions. Did you want to say anything else?
No, I was just curious to what you were saying. I'm not sure I really grasped what you were trying to put down there, but maybe it made sense to other people.
Yeah, so again, if we want to understand what a transcendental argument is, there's a lot of things out there that display what it is on a very basic level. It's not identical to Kant's philosophy, but it's the idea that transcendental categories, which are presupposed and necessary for any possibility of having knowledge, that the transcendental categories themselves could only work in a kind of world where you have God, a personal God, creation, providence, etc., all the other divine attributes. So that's the kind of world that we live in. That's how the argument runs. And so that's the world that gives an account for knowledge and transcendental categories, ethics, etc. The other worldviews, atheist, whatever, they utilize those transcendental categories. They posit propositions and knowledge claims, but can't give an account for how those things are the case because they have a fundamental mistake in their worldview because of the atheism, because of the rejection of the specific theism.
All right, thank you.
Yep.